Well, that's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel and log on armoroftruth.net.
Greetings, everyone. Armor of Truth Live number 246. That's right. Less than 24 hours. We're back. Death rates are up 40%. Why are young people suddenly dying in, quote, huge numbers? Welcome to the show, Summer.
Hello. It's good to be back here again so quickly.
Yes.
Hi out there, everyone.
A little rest and right back at it. What do you think about this topic? Quickly, just 15, 20 seconds. What do you think is, how long before something really intense happens? You tell me, is anything going to happen?
The Deagle report says by 2025 there's a huge dip in the population, but we just have to stay in prayer, and this is not at all surprising. We were warning against this leading in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we've seen. We've actually. I think now I don't have the data on it, but maybe I should get some. Well, according to, as we're going to talk about here today, according to actuaries. Now, these are insurance companies. It is their business to know how many people are dying and why they're dying. They have to know that. That's their job to know that.
Yeah,
right?
and
especially life insurance.
Remember when we went and saw our insurance people? They were also talking about it very early on.
Yeah,
in 2021.
Yeah, they were saying that. Let me go down a little lower here. There we go. Yeah, our insurance agents. This wasn't life insurance, but we were just talking generally about the industry. They were pretty concerned too. Let me just get this out of the way. For today's show, we're going to be using code words. Okay, here are your code words for today. All right.
It'll be interesting to see if you can keep to your code words.
Well, and we're going to play a couple videos, and they won't be using the code words, but we'll just see. We want to do the best we can to allow this video to stay on the planet, or at least to not get buried
in good graces.
You can see there, folks. Novid means that word. Umpteen means that number. And for jabs, we're going to say axe queen. Axe queen. And for when you get your second jab, we're going to call that a rooster. And if we have to use, I've got them backwards there. I messed up at the bottom, but we're going to use the word rot for a shot. Okay. Now, having said that, are we ready to practice? Novid, umpteen, axe queen, rooster, rot. You got it? Hey, Summer.
Yeah, this is not pronouns or anything, though. Don't worry, guys.
No. Hey, did you get your Novid, umpteen, axe queen, rooster, rot yet?
Absolutely not.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Anybody out there got your rooster rot? Okay. Now let's get started. That's a little humor to get started, but this is a very serious topic. And, well, the claim is, anyway, that that Axe Queen caused excess deaths. The Axe Queen caused excess deaths 40%, at a rate of 40%. We're going to show you the method of how they came to that number too. Disabilities are up 33%. Sudden deaths in athletes up 310%. Pfizer profits up 225%. Surprise, surprise. 2020 saw a spike in deaths in America. We're focused on America. I will go to New Zealand in a bit, but mostly we're talking about America tonight. So 2020 saw a spike in deaths in America. Smaller than you might imagine. I didn't get a code word for pandemic, I guess. We'll just use that word. Smaller than you might imagine, or at least in line with. Some of which could be attributed to COVID and to initial treatment strategies that were not effective. But then, in 2021, the stats people expected went off the rails. Let's take a look for a second, just for fun. Let's take a look at, get that over the shoulder there. Let's take a look at when I do a search for the words excess death and Axe Queen. Look at what you get. Look at the top search results here when you do this. You got factcheck.org. You got health feedback here saying evidence shows that Novodumpteen Axe Queens don't increase the excess deaths. You do have, I put Ed Dowd in the search there, but AP News is going to fact check you there. Here's Fact Check Explorer results. Says mRNA Novid Axe Queens are not associated with excess deaths. Reuters does a fact check. Anyway, so you see there, they're working pretty hard to make sure that everything is covered. Right? Okay. Dr. William Makis. You can find him on Twitter. You can find him on Substack. Just discovered him today. And that's because I was looking for people who were discussing this topic, young people buying the farm. So Dr. William Makis, I'm going to say Makis. It's M-A-K-I-S. I'll give you a full screen here. You can see his Substack here is called Novid Intel. Novodumpteen Intel. Okay. Mass casualty concerts. How about this? What do you think about that? Stadium staff and medic go into cardiac arrest at Ed Sheeran concert in Pittsburgh. All right, that's an article from yesterday. 17 more hospitalized. What in the world is going on? Like these mass events, right? Where people are dying suddenly. This Ed Sheeran concert, 2 people died of cardiac arrest, 17 in the hospital. In 2022, South Korea, at a concert, 159 dead. 2021 at the Travis Scott concert, 10 dead. Here is an archive of articles that Dr. Makis has put together. Now, let's see, do I have any? Dr. Makis. Yeah, here you go. Here, this is his credentials. He's a radiologist, an oncologist, a cancer researcher, author of 100-plus publications, chief of oncology at the Wellness Company in Canada. And there you've got his links. All right. Here's some of the articles, some of the headlines. SADS and SIDS, 32-year-old UK mom dies of sudden adult death syndrome 14 hours after her 5-month-old baby died of sudden infant death syndrome. Seems unbelievable, right? Seems too unbelievable to be real. Is it real? Something's happening. Cover up. Our landmark Novodomptine Axe Queen autopsy paper. So far, so good, right, Summer? I'm keeping up with the code.
You are.
74% of sudden deaths were caused by the Axe Queen. Multiple sclerosis, neurological injury that can be caused or exacerbated by Novodomptine mRNA Axe Queens. And here's an interesting one. Guillain-Barré syndrome, neurological injury caused by Novodomptine mRNA Axe Queens. 12 tragic GBS cases explored. We happen to think that this is what, do you remember, Summer, what the doctors were saying about Mom? She has a diagnosis of Guillain-Barré syndrome. And
yeah, but
she doesn't really have it, right? They just didn't have
they had her in the hospital, and they were doing every test known to man, and they were actually really interested in her, and they brought several doctors in on the case.
My mother had, help me remember if I get all this right. She had 2 things happen, and they happened to her about a year after her second shot.
Rot.
Her second rot.
Yeah.
Because she got the first one, and then she got a rooster rot after that. By the way, folks, if you're just tuning in, you wonder why I'm talking nonsense, here's the code. Okay, there's the code. The code is over my shoulder there, so you know what we're talking about here. So, yeah. So my mother had a wildfire cancer, an odd, crazy cancer that doesn't really happen in women of her demographic.
Or her race.
Yeah. And then
her age range or her race.
That was early in 2022. And then in September of 2022, one Friday, she had her leg went numb. Right leg went numb. In the hospital for 15 days. That leg is still numb. It was a blood clot.
Is
a blood clot, and they could not find anything to diagnose it. All they had, and a team of doctors stood there and seemed to agree anyway, it was an Axe Queen injury. So, there's Dr. William Makis. I think we've got to find people who are doing good work on this and share as much as we can, because we're in trouble here. Transverse myelitis, severe neurological injury. Healthcare workers, paramedics, chiropractors, nursing or physician assistants, dental assistants. Right here, 42-year-old paramedic Ryan Vina died in his sleep. Cause of his death, unknown. That has become too common. Firefighters are dying suddenly. Novodomptine mRNA Axe Queen mandated group suffering from injuries and deaths. Blood clots. I should have probably made a code for that one too, but major problem with Pfizer, Moderna, Novodomptine Axe Queens. Some are lucky to survive. like NFL Hall of Famer Deion Sanders had a, I'll reverse him, had a clud blot. And Jamie Foxx. I was gonna say Jamie Farr, but that was the guy.
Jamie Foxx.
That was the guy on MASH. That was Colonel Klinger. That's a different guy altogether. Jamie Foxx also apparently was blind and paralyzed for a while. Seems to be back in good shape now. Okay, Dr. William Makis. All right, so here's something for you too. Let's just go ahead and give you some. What can you do, right? If you received one of these treatments, you've received one of these Axe Queens. Dr. Makis has a suggestion here, right, for treatment. Fasting for 48 to 72 hours. It's not too bad. You can probably pull that off. It creates autophagy. All right, that is the body's detox process. Basically, autophagy, those two words right there, auto means self, and whenever you see a phagy, that means like to eat. So it's the body eating itself. Basically what that is, you're fasting for so long that your body begins to, well, at least in your stomach anyway, you begin to burn your fat, burn all your resources. And anyway, so this would, he says that it kills the novodomptine Axe Queen spike protein, or kills those damaged cells and reboots the immune system. I don't know. Not giving any advice here, just telling you that's what he said. So injured people have damaged immune systems. Fasting creates new immune cells, according to this doctor. So you can check that out as well. That is on Twitter. Chicago Law Office seeking compensation for people with these kinds of injuries. Again, there's the SIDS, the story where the mother and the child died on the same day. Mass casualty concerts. Cancer on the rise. All experts agree. The only question is why? Why is it happening? Let's jump over to New Zealand for a moment, right? Because there are plenty of articles from the United States too. But fit, healthy, young rugby players dropping dead. Recent Herald articles detail a number of medical incidents relating to rugby players. Piecing together the details from several articles, it's possible to glean the following information. For example, Suburbs Rugby Club's premier development side. So this is rugby, and these are positions. I'll skip a lot of that because here in the United States we don't know much about that. But this player collapsed moments after the final whistle, believed to have suffered a seizure and stopped breathing. Paramedics performed life-saving CPR. He was transported to Auckland Hospital to receive treatment. And on June 17th, Adrian Lole was seen stumbling back to the try line before collapsing. Rushed into surgery where he had a blood clot removed from his brain. Another player suffered a critical brain injury during a game, died in the hospital days after the incident. After receiving a scan and surgery, he held on for a few days. So the events come after the player we just mentioned earlier, Terry Livingstone, and a rugby union player from Ruatoria. Both died after on-field incidents. That's 4 incidents in a short space of time. The reporting is ambiguous and refers to, quote, a tragic incident, and, quote, a major brain injury or severely injured. On-field incidents, however, it's not clear whether the players were injured in the course of play or whether they suffered an injury to the brain due to a medical event. But at least 2 of these cases, it would seem to be the latter. Players have collapsed or had a seizure rather than experience a blow to the head. We talked about, man, I've already forgotten the Buffalo Bills player's name. Chat, help me out here. Buffalo Bills player, Damar Hamlin. Got it. Damar Hamlin. We covered that story here. What was that? That was back in October, November of last year, somewhere around there. Maybe closer around Thanksgiving. I can't remember when that happened. But same thing there, right? Not a word. Surgery's been needed to remove blood clots in one case. There have been previous reports in 2021, 2022 involving young rugby players dying suddenly from medical events. The reason we go into New Zealand on this is because the NFL has been, they've been tough about not letting information get out. So if it's happening there, it's probably happening here too. What's going on? Has anyone asked the obvious question? Of course, as we've stated repeatedly, it's not just athletes who are suffering so-called unexpected injuries and death. All age groups and walks of life are suffering unexplained elevated death rates. It's becoming increasingly known that the injection of a synthetic genetic material is associated with a number of serious medical conditions showing up in many people. When human cells produce a foreign protein, they become a target of the immune system. So you would expect autoimmune disorders. Inflammation occurs as the body tries to remove the foreign protein. Once injected, the mRNA ends up in the blood, in the circulation, where it can be taken up into by any cells, any organs. And it does seem to pass the blood-brain barrier. And it seems that the heart muscle, the brain, and the lining of blood vessels are common sites for production of this spike protein. Inflammation in the heart is known as myocarditis. If it affects electrical pathways in the heart, heart-stopping rhythm disturbances can occur. And this is how a sudden collapse and or death would happen. Now, post-jab myocarditis affects young men particularly and seems to be exacerbated by physical exertion. How awful is that, right? You're a young guy and you're an athlete, professional athlete, or you just enjoy, you're a weekend warrior, right? And you love it, and all of a sudden, now you feel like, well, if I go out and exert myself, I might just fall over dead.
Yeah, I looked back in the videos. We did that in January 4th, 2023. So the year kicked off with that incident.
That's right.
And everyone watched. It's like the whole world was watching that.
It's because that was a big game, because it was the Bills and the Bengals were battling for the top spot in their division anyway, and it meant a lot for the playoffs.
And there was so much drama around it. It was very strange how they really fixated on it. Like normally they'll cut to another scene if there's an incident on the field, but this, it was like so over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If possible adverse reactions from novel injections are not considered in the possible diagnoses in these cases, and then ruled out as a possible cause for some of these things, the big problem with that, right? In other words, if it keeps going the way it is, and the mainstream media and the big tech platforms, social media platforms, and the mainstream in general, if they keep on doing what they're doing and shutting down any of this conversation or calling everybody conspiracy theorists and calling it hate speech or whatever, well, then they're going to miss a potential treatment, right? They're going to miss the cure for this if there is one. right? So as long as people are ignoring it or pretending like it's not existing, they're going to miss the opportunity to help these people. People like
Your mom.
our mother.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In addition, damage is cumulative. So it seems like the more of these injections you get, the more likely adverse effects are to occur. It's looking like there really are even. Now this is speculation for me, but there are people doing work on this, that there are even deadlier batches in some areas, and there are placebos out there. And keep in mind that placebo doesn't mean safe. Placebo doesn't mean saline. It just means it's not what was expected. According to published studies, these things are out there. So we keep mentioning these situations because until there's an acknowledgement that these axe queens can cause serious, significant harm, and open discussion and debate are allowed, there won't be any research about how to treat people who've been affected, nor will there be a discussion about how to prevent any further damage. So that's the big deal right now. That's why we're covering this, is because this has to be talked about. Has to be talked about. Now, before we jump into our next segment, indulge me for 30 seconds here, folks. Please take a moment to like this video. All right. Share it.
Give us a thumbs up. Give us a
Do
thumbs
it.
up.
Right.
That would be
Engage.
awesome.
Engage with the YouTube video.
Leave a smiley in the comments.
Hit that thumbs up button. Like the video. Share the video and leave a comment. Even if you don't have anything to say, just say hello. It helps. It helps the algorithm do something to the video. It helps. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. It's free and it really does help. And folks, download the Armor of Truth mobile app today. It's 100% free. You're going to get live notifications and a direct link whenever and wherever we go live. Exclusive content, articles, reports, and resources. The new Tracking Dystopia podcast and a regular Bible study podcast. If you can support AOT financially, every donation or gift makes a difference. Use the AOT mobile app Give tab or visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links in the description under this video. If you can, set up a recurring monthly donation to help us plan for the future of Armor of Truth. Hey, what are you waiting for? Download the Armor of Truth mobile app now. I am Brad. I am joined by my talented and precious wife, Summer. Say hello.
Hello again.
Together, we are Armor of Truth, and we're seeking a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
I need to get an echo on that for you, don't I?
That would be a bit over the top.
It'd be fun, right? Get that AOT mobile app, folks. Tell you some more features at the end of the show. Now, here's the article that really got me on this topic today. Indiana Life Insurance Company, or Indiana Life Insurance Company CEO says deaths are up 40% among people ages 18 to 64. Now, this is really interesting here. This is where we get down and we find some real data. Right? This is not speculation. These are facts. OneAmerica is a $100 billion insurance company headquartered in Indianapolis, Indiana. And it's had its offices there since 1877. The company has about 2,400 employees and sells life insurance, including selling group life insurance to employers nationwide. Okay, just lay that out there so that you understand this is not some. This is a company that's existed for over 100 years. This is the real deal. Okay. In January 2022, OneAmerica CEO Scott Davison publicly disclosed a shocking statistic that emerged between July and December of 2021. He says, quote, "We're seeing right now the highest death rates we have seen in the history of this business. And it's not just at OneAmerica. The data is consistent across every player in this business." And this is what he had to say. Death rates are up 40% higher than before. And it's not elderly people who are dying at this abnormal rate. It's primarily working age people 18 to 64 who are, and these are not unemployed or somehow, these are working people. These are people who are employees of companies who have jobs that are at least good enough where you can get, benefits, right? People that have group life insurance plans. Now, here's another point he made. He said, just to give you an idea of how bad it is, a once in 200 year catastrophe would be a 10% increase in the death rates. So a 40% increase in deaths is really unheard of. Most of the claims for deaths being filed are not classified as novadumpteen deaths, Davison said. At the same time, the company is seeing an uptick in disability claims, saying at first it was short-term disability claims, and now the increase is in long-term disability claims. For the week ending November 6, 2021, there were far fewer deaths from novadumpteen in Indiana compared to the previous year, 195 versus 336. But more deaths from other causes, 1,350 versus 1,319. The extraordinarily high death rate quoted by Davison matched what hospitals in the state were seeing as well. Dr. Lindsay Weaver, Indiana's chief medical officer, said in 2021 the number of hospitalizations in Indiana was higher than before the novadumpteen axe queen was introduced a year prior. Higher than the previous 5 years. In November 2021, the majority of ICU beds were not taken up by Novid patients. It was just 37%, while 54% of the ICU beds are being occupied by people with other illnesses or conditions. Now let's introduce you to this gentleman here, Ed Dowd. Ed Dowd, who has written a book called Cause Unknown, The Epidemic of Sudden Deaths in 2021 and 2022. All right. Dowd explains the method for how he's got the same data. He's got the 40% number too. Let's listen to him explain why he came across this number or how they went about coming up with this data.
And my work and my partner's work points to something that happened with the employed of our country. It's been detrimental to your health to be employed in 21 and 22. And we examined the Society of Actuaries, which is an industry group for insurers that does surveys. In August of 22, they came out with a survey for their group life policyholders. And group life is a specific policy for those who onboard to Fortune 500 or mid-sized companies. You get this death benefit as kind of a freebie when you onboard, and you get 1 or 2 extra salary. Should you die, you get that. Your family gets that, or your beneficiary. You have to be employed at the time you get it. Well, this is a great business for insurance companies. And in 2021, the whole industry experienced 40% excess death in ages 25 through 64. The millennials 25 through 44 were hard hit particularly. The group life policyholders generally die at 1/3 the rate of the general U.S. population in any given year. And in 2021, I just said they had 40% excess death. The general U.S. population had 32% excess death.
Well, it seems like, tell us about some of these unexpected sudden deaths. It seems like there are a lot of them. I mean, just from a Google search, you can find like a lot of 12, 14, 16, 18-year-olds that are just dropping dead suddenly. Tell us more.
All right, I'm going to stop it there so we don't get too much of their narrative in our video. I just wanted you to hear him explain, why they came to this number. Did they make it up? No, this was a result of surveys and research done by insurance actuaries to figure out. They have to find out for an insurance company. You got to figure out what is the risk in providing this insurance benefit to this person, and by the risk you determine what the cost would be or what the benefit payout should be. So that's just an essential part of their business. Significantly, the majority of the deaths were not attributed to COVID. A 40% increase in deaths is literally earth-shaking. Now, recently we've heard stories about a bombshell story about UFOs and, David Grush. This is really a bombshell. This is truly earth-shaking, right? And this is why it bugs me to see people taking time and, presenting that UFO story to you as if that's something that you need to spend your time thinking about. When we got stuff like this going on, we've got stuff like in California where they're going to put parents in prison for they're going to take a child out of the home, hide it from the parent, and possibly throw the parent in prison if they simply don't agree with the trans agenda. So we've got plenty of things going on. Artificial intelligence might wake up and go rogue. We got a lot of things that we need to be talking about. The UFO deal is not one of them. Even a 10% increase, as we heard earlier from Davison, in excess deaths would have been a 1 in 200 year event. But this was 40%. And therein lies the story, a story that starts with obvious questions. What has caused this historic spike in deaths among young people? What caused the shift from old people who are expected to die to younger people who are expected to keep on living? It is not the disease. It's not the illness. COVID-19. It's not that. That's over. If it ever existed, it's over now. And especially, we've always known that it's not a significant cause of death in young people. It seems to be the younger you are, the better your chances. Various stakeholders opine about what could be causing this epidemic of unexpected sudden deaths. But Cause Unknown, Dowd's book, does not opine or speculate. The facts just are, and math just is. The book begins with a close look at the actual human reality behind the statistics, and when you see the people who are represented by the dry term excess mortality, it's difficult to accept so many unexpected sudden deaths of young athletes, known to be the healthiest among us. Similarly, when lots of healthy teenagers and young adults die in their sleep with no obvious reason, or collapse and die on a family outing, or fall down dead while playing sports, that all by itself raises an immediate public health concern, or at least it used to. Our leaders used to care about stuff like that. Ask yourself if you recall seeing these kinds of things occurring during your own life. In junior high, in high school, did you see these things happening around you? In college? How many times in your life did you hear of a performer dropping dead on stage mid-performance? Your own life experience, your own intuition, your own knowing will tell you that what you're about to see is not normal, or at least it wasn't normal before the year 2020, 2021. Now, jump in.
Yeah, we've got Brian Brown in the chat, and
good to see Brian Brown.
Yeah, good to see Brian Brown, and he mentions that he's working in insurance, and he says what we've been hearing and tracking, which is that personal auto insurance, home insurance, and landlord policies are getting super duper expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yeah, we've been tracking that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's tough out there right now. Everything is, the cost of living has just skyrocketed.
Transfer of wealth.
We know what's happening, right? We know what's going on. It's that conspiracy theory called the Great Reset that doesn't really exist. I'll show you something about that in a little bit, where there's one of the fact-checking groups out there saying that the Great Reset is a conspiracy theory. The family of 24-year-old George Watts has recently filed a lawsuit accusing, listen closely, folks, they have filed a lawsuit bringing suit against the U.S. Department of Defense. All right. And in their claim, they're claiming willful misconduct on the part of the Department of Defense, claiming that the Axe Queen killed their son. Let's listen to this. Now, what's interesting about this? Remember
it
this?
Strikes at the heart of, that's who they should be pulling that claim against.
Right. Yeah. Remember that this is the first case where we've seen the proper defendant named.
Department of Defense.
I think also, we'll see in a second. I think also the Department of Health and Human Services was mentioned too. Let's listen to this for a moment.
We never made that trip to the emergency room.
He's funny.
Kind of shy.
You get to know him, and he's a jokester and quick-witted kid.
The parents of college student George Watts Jr. from Lockwood say he was a healthy 24-year-old who loved video games and had no prior medical history. In August of 2021, he received his first dose of the Pfizer vaccine so he could take classes in person at Corning Community College.
He wanted to get that one because that one was FDA approved.
After getting his second Pfizer shot in September, George started coughing and feeling sick. He was taken to an emergency room where he tested negative for COVID. He was diagnosed with a sinus infection, given antibiotics, and released. A week later, he wasn't feeling any better, so his family took him back to the ER. Doctors told them his sinus infection could take longer to clear up and sent him home again.
So another week goes by and he's getting worse, and his cough is getting worse. He's coughing up blood.
George died on October 27th after collapsing in his room. The Bradford County Deputy Coroner said the cause of death was, quote, COVID vaccine-related myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart. A lawsuit filed by the Watts family says George is one of more than 270 million Americans that were used by the Department of Defense as, quote, human subjects in its medical experiment, the largest in modern history. We reached out to the DOD. A spokesperson told us, quote, the Department of Defense declines to comment due to ongoing litigation. We also...
How about that? DOD refuses to comment because of ongoing litigation. I wonder if they're talking about this case, or they're talking about, or maybe that's a canned response, or are there other lawsuits? Listen to the rest.
Also reached out to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. A spokesperson told us the CDC investigated more than 19,000 preliminary reports of deaths among people who received a COVID vaccine. That's a percentage of 0.0029. Of those deaths, the CDC told us, quote, continued monitoring has identified 9 deaths causally associated with COVID-19 vaccination. The CDC says all 9 were from complications of thrombosis or blood clotting involving the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Well, okay. First off, I would disagree.
All right, let's get away from Christopher Wray here for now. Okay, so that's an interesting story for our time. Go ahead.
Yeah, just sort of elaborate for the people why the Department of Defense is so key.
Oh, I am. I'm going to do it.
All right, you're getting ready to pull the trigger on that, yeah?
Yeah, we're going to do that. Yeah, so you can go to Sasha Latypova's Substack, or I think it was the DeMar Hamlin show where we actually covered that, how the DOD is involved here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're at war in the United States, and globally. Public health emergencies have largely the same legal status as war declarations these days, like when they declare a national emergency. We've got an article on our Substack and on the Armor of Truth app on the Articles tab, where you can read an article by Summer about the abuse of power.
That's right.
Abuse of power with national emergencies and public health emergency declarations. Because they effectively suspend the Constitution. It's not supposed to, but that's what's happening. Let the executive branch, including the Department of Defense and the Department of Health and Human Services, let them usurp the power and neuter the legislative and judicial branches of the government. Right? So the more these emergency powers are abused, it strains our judicial system and it becomes weakened. Once initiated, there are no stopping conditions once these emergency powers are enacted. And I think it was currently there are, I think it was 2021, there were 37 national emergencies active. And we covered in one of our shows that there was, it's not the oldest emergency that's active now that's been renewed every year, but it's one of the oldest, the national emergency declared by George W. Bush after 9/11, right, which gave them the power to suspend the writ of habeas corpus. In other words, your presumption of innocence when you're charged with the crime. Now, that national emergency and the subsequent Patriot Act made it possible for law enforcement to detain American citizens indefinitely with no charges. That's not good. Deployment of the biochemical poisons advertised as Axe Queens are or any other medical countermeasures does not depend on federal or state pharmaceutical regulations and are not subject to any consumer or research subject protections like informed consent rules. So that term, countermeasures, that's what the DOD ordered. They didn't order any kind of medical treatment. They ordered countermeasures. So this brings up ethics, right? Ethics. This is why worldview is so important everywhere you go, because we're talking about ethics. Is it right for them to do this, or is it wrong? How do you determine? You can't go on this if it feels wrong. You got to be able to tell them why it's wrong. Is this the intent to harm? Biochemical poisons advertised as Axe Queens were pushed on an unsuspecting public and fooled professionals under a bait and switch scheme where FDA approval was a sham. The role of the Department of Defense, right? All COVID countermeasures, right? You have to remember, that's when they say, when you look at the DOD documents and it says countermeasures, that's what they mean. They mean the jab. All countermeasures were ordered by the DOD, typically, and in the contracts they were called demonstrations. Right? They were ordered via other transactions and authority contracts. DOD oversaw the development, manufacture, and distribution of the countermeasures. Hundreds of contracts for countermeasures became available via Freedom of Information Act requests and SEC disclosures in partially redacted form. The contracts include the removal of all liability for the pharmaceutical companies, the manufacturers, and removal of all liability for any contractors along the supply and distribution chain under the 2005 PrEP Act. Now, what you'll see in her work about this is that it took a few decades of slow one new law here, one act there to lay the foundation to make this kind of thing possible. This is why a lot of people don't think it's possible that they could do this or would do this. And when people say, well, they're breaking the law, they're not breaking the law. They planned for this. It's just like the Nazi regime. They weren't doing anything illegal. They did the same thing. They spent years putting the infrastructure, or putting the legal structure in place to be able to do everything they wanted to do. The implications of all of this cannot be overstated. Senior executive service officials within the U.S. government authorized and funded the deployment of biochemical poisons on Americans and others without clarifying their prototype and without large-scale demonstration, legal status, making the materials not subject to normal regulatory oversight, all while knowingly and willfully maintaining a fraudulent pseudo-regulatory presentation to the public. This might be the worst ever. These poisons have harmed and killed and continue to harm and kill Americans and other people around the world. These countermeasures and the deployment program has been partially coordinated through Public Health Emergency Medical Countermeasure Enterprise, that's PHEMCE, and via several other public, private, hybrid, and quasi-governmental entities, including but not limited to the FDA's Medical Countermeasures Initiative, the MCMI, BARDA, and the Medical, Chemical, Biological, Radiological, Nuclear Defense Consortium. So there's that. It's frustrating, right? It's infuriating after a while when you see what's actually happened.
It is infuriating, and it makes me think about also how we covered a few months ago about Martine Rothblatt, right? And how back in 1993 they started the legalese, starting up, bringing into legislation about transsexual and transgender health law. So this is another incident where, or another instance where you can see, dating back to 1993, this whole thing starts. So think about how long that's taken to get the traction that it has right now, to have the teeth that it does right now. But there it is, and I'm staring at the document right now that spearheaded that.
The document that set the stage for what we see as the trans movement.
Yep.
Today. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff.
Yeah,
too.
which basically, is changing what it means to be man and woman, and creating a third sex.
Well, that's wild, because that's how they do business, right? That's what the Nazi regime did. We're going to talk about Nazis in just a moment, because they
legislate it.
Yeah, they just pass laws to do whatever they want to do. All right, Children's Health Defense. Now, this is the organization, I don't know if it was founded by Robert Kennedy or not, but RFK is definitely associated with it. I thought I'd bring them up today because when you look around for people who are doing something, right, who's actually bringing lawsuits, right? So we just gave you the one where a family is suing the DOD, that is the proper defendant. Children's Health Defense has initiated a number of court cases against governments, agencies, and media companies. In August of 2020, Children's Health Defense filed a lawsuit in district court against Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, and 4 fact-checking services. Their claim was that PolitiFact censored a truthful public health statement about jabs through its fact-checking. And they say that Facebook collaborated with government entities, specifically the World Health Organization and the CDC, to suppress ex-Queen's safety speech by flagging it as disinformation, and to censor valid and truthful speech, including speech critical of those agencies and policies. Now, the facts of the case, Children's Health Defense said viewership of its post was reduced by 95% after being labeled as misinformation. So that tells you that they certainly can have an effect on you. When they want to take you out, they can be quite effective at doing it. Here's the Facebook suit. This is where it was. This is the order granting the defendant's motions to dismiss. The case was dismissed for failure to state an actionable claim, as you would expect. Children's Health Defense has appealed. Cases like these are very difficult. They're challenging because they're novel. No one's ever seen anything like this. There have never been social media behemoths like this with such extraordinary powers. August 16th, 2021, Children's Health Defense and 18 students sued Rutgers University and its Board of Governors and its president over their decision to mandate jabs for all students attending the school in the fall. They had told students earlier in the year that it wouldn't be required. There would be no mandate to come to school. And then they reneged on that. And kids couldn't go to school unless they got the countermeasure injected. Rutgers' policy, they say, is a violation of the right to informed consent and the right to refuse unwanted medical treatments. Well, they might say, but yeah, you don't have to take it. You just can't go to this school. Well, that's not okay. It's a public university. Children's Health Defense President and General Counsel Mary Holland said no one should be forced or coerced into accepting any medical procedure against their wishes. Rutgers' actions recklessly endanger its students. Now, the facts of this case, this is an important fact here. Rutgers was working. It was learned that Rutgers was working with all three manufacturers, Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, to study and develop their countermeasures in ongoing clinical trials, and that Rutgers would benefit financially if more people were required to take the jabs, which were at the time defined by the FDA as experimental. Now, this is clearly a conflict of interest. As confirmed by the CDC, young people all along were not really at risk or minimal risk with a 99.985% survival rate. Between mid-December 2020 and August 6 of 2021, 559,040 adverse events were reported to the vaccine adverse reaction system, adverse event. I remember it's where you report your injuries, where you report adverse effects. That's over 500,000 adverse events reported but between December 2020 and August 2021, including 12,791 reports of deaths. Many of those were young people ages 12 to 25. Now, by comparison, in 1976, the flu shot, with that particular shot, there were approximately 50 total deaths, and that vaccine campaign was immediately aborted. That was 50 too many for them in 1976. My, how things have changed. A federal court dismissed this lawsuit on September 23rd of last year. August 31st, 2021, Children's Health Defense sued the FDA for approving the Novodontine Axe Queen for children. A disposition on that case, a federal court dismissed the complaint. Children's Health Defense has appealed. This year, January 10th, 2023, Children's Health Defense sued media giants Reuters, AP, the BBC, and the Washington Post in an antitrust suit. The claim was that these groups were working together to keep certain opinions out of the public square. This case is still pending. January 25th of this year, Children's Health Defense sued the FDA under Freedom of Information Act requests to force the release of VAERS data. This case is pending. April 12th of this year, Children's Health Defense sued the National Institutes of Health for failing to produce documents related to adverse events experienced by individuals who received the jab. This case is pending too. Now, to give you an example of what they mean when they like Children's Health Defense, they're big, so they're getting attacked from all angles when it comes to this. So here's one of the groups that tries to shut these any conversation about this down. This is counterhate.com. This is the Center for Countering Digital Hate. It says on the website, social media hosted a lot of fake health news this year. Here's what went most viral. Let's see. I don't know, is this the, yeah, this is the right place. You can see what they've got here. The disinformation dozen. 12 anti-vaxxers are responsible for almost 2/3 of the anti-vax content circulating on social media platforms. Does that mean it's not true or something? So they show the ones that went most viral, I guess, is what they're. Let's look at the anti-vax misinformation for a second. Right, and look at this. They claim to be about child safety. All right. The anti-vax industry boasts annual revenues of at least $36 million and is worth up to $1.1 billion to big tech with 62 million followers. That's really pretty small when you think about how big the pharmaceutical industry is. But they say it's big business. But lies cost lives. We can agree on that one. Substack and anti-vax newsletters. All right, they're not happy that people can write on Substack about these things. Anyway, so there's counterhate.com. Here's another one. Here's the NBC article. Social media hosted a lot of fake health news this year. Here's what went most viral. This is 2019. See, this is before 2020. This is before it all happened. Right? The most viral pieces of fake health news pushed far-reaching conspiracies between governments and medical communities and suggested ditching common medical treatment of life-threatening diseases for unproven cures. The article says a cabal of doctors is hiding the cure for cancer. Berries are more effective than Axe Queens, and eating instant noodles can kill you. These are some of the claims from the internet's most viral fake health news in 2019.
Well, if they've got MSG in them, those noodles.
Yeah. Well, of course they're gonna use the most ridiculous things they can find. But yeah, you don't want to eat that MSG.
Well, it made me think. All of this absurdity makes me think about this Business Insider article that I came across today, because we always keep an eye on what the others are saying, and they're talking about the zombie Twitter concept. They're saying, like, welcome to zombie Twitter. Twitter was never the largest social media network or the most profitable, but it was undeniably relevant. That is, until Musk came along, and now Twitter's free speech policy has earned the endorsement of a Taliban leader. So they're talking about if you're on Twitter and you like Twitter or whatever, then you're a Taliban supporter. So anyway, it's just I love how they do this. Hate speech, and
guilt by association.
Guilt by association. Yeah,
that is the game they play.
Yeah.
So some of the stories that they ran with. Here's some of the fake news for 2019: cancer, unproven cures. Said the most viral health misinformation in 2019 was on the topics of cancer, unproven cures, according to the review. In relation to some topics, including cancer and fluoride, fake health news dominated overall news. most engaged article about cancer in 2019, for example, pushed a stew of medical conspiracies, including one positing that Big Pharma, a nebulous group that includes doctors and federal health organizations, is hiding a cure for cancer. The April article, Cancer Industry Not Looking for a Cure. They're too busy making money. Is anybody going to argue with that? And they call natural news. We've been there before. They call natural news like one of the worst fake news sites. A website owned and operated by Mike Adams, a dietary supplement purveyor. I've been on that site before. That was one of the sites where they were. I think it was him. He was talking about how he was also. Now the art. I'm not talking. There's nothing wrong with most of his articles there, but he was the one that was talking about the church being. You can't go near the church because the church is evil, and so I don't know what to do with that right now. But anyway, the other topics they were talking about in 2019, consequences of misinformation. I guess it was really cancer. That was the big thing in 2019. Okay. Now, I shared this with you the other day. Now let's talk about the worldview behind this and the kind of people that exist here. Eugenics and Nazism, or at least the worldview and the spirit behind Nazism is still alive. They're still alive. They're still with us. This is 1969, Club of Rome founder Aurelio Pecchii, where I shared this with you the other day, where he was, let me get my highlights here because I don't want to take the time to read the whole thing. All right, so Pecchii makes a few important points here in this book. He's written here, the book is The Chasm Ahead. Okay, he says on page 173, talking about control, we have now reached a point where we can contemplate no path other than systematic family planning. So I'm talking to you about eugenics because that's what we see happening with these axe queens, with these jabs, right? Family planning under the aegis of a moral and scientific authorities and directed possibly by an appropriate international organization. Humanity is going to face unprecedented calamity, and that everything will get out of control if it cannot reasonably control population. A world population plan is pressing, and that one day it will come and achieve some measure of birth control. Otherwise, some solution will come the hard way. One of those human incontinence will be remedied through some new germ or virus, perhaps, he says. Or there'll be a forced exodus or mass sterilization, or with the help of other clean methods, so-called clean methods. Biochemistry might suggest a ceiling on population or new births will be enforced in some nations by due process of law. In others, perhaps by international measures. So he was kind of prophetic there. That's exactly what the World Health Organization is trying to do right now. He says that another possibility is the elimination of all surplus humans. The elimination of all surplus humans. 1969, folks, who will of course belong to the poor of the world. Right? The elimination of surplus human beings. Listen to this.
In the industrial, all these changes, and if there is a gap between those that know to produce bodies and minds and those that do not, then this is far greater than anything we saw before in history. And this time, if you're not part of the revolution fast enough, then you probably become extinct. Once you know how to produce bodies and brains and minds, so cheap labor in Africa or South Asia or wherever, it simply counts for nothing. Again, I think that the biggest question maybe in economics.
Here comes the point. Pay attention right here.
And politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people. I don't think we have an economic model for that. My best guess, which is just a guess, is that food will not be a problem. With that kind of technology, you will be able to produce food to feed everybody. The problem is more boredom and what to do with them, and how will they find some sense of meaning in life when they are basically meaningless, worthless.
Kid, are you listening to this? When these people are worthless, what are they going to do? Worldview is critical. Eugenics and the spirit of Nazism, they're alive and well. They're working hard to impose their will on the world, and they're masked. They're masked through modern religious worldviews, techno-humanism, and dataism. These are the two religions that Harari has mentioned. Techno-humanism being the civilization with the strongest transhuman presence, and dataism, which is the civilization that has will win, that has the greatest super intelligence, the greatest single super intelligence, something like that. Do not allow him or anyone else to mislead you. Yuval Harari, like most techno-humanists or dataists, is very religious. We proved this the last Friday night or something like that. He's got a religion, and he's proclaiming it. Check that show out if you haven't seen it yet. Harari flaunts the concept of the new global useless class, which artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and automation and the fourth industrial revolution will supposedly create. Davos man himself, Klaus Schwab, openly calls for all the masses to be chipped so that we can be interfaced, so that we can be connected to the mainframe.
Yes, downloaded into the mainframe.
Yeah. Perpetually connected to a global network that monitors not so much what we do, because that's pretty easy to know now. They want to know what you think so they can control it. They want to know how you feel so they can control that. They want to know what's going on under the skin, as Harari has said himself. This is the age, he said, this will be the age when we remember where surveillance went under the skin. Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg promote Neuralink, an actual physical interface with the brain for the purpose of, as they say, got to keep humanity relevant. Right? You got to do that by merging man with this technology. They believe this is the thing to do because they believe that mankind has to facilitate his own biological evolution. And of course, there's where you see the specter of evolutionary naturalism or Darwinian evolution. It has so twisted the minds of the godless element of modern science to the point where geneticists like Richard Dawkins, Peter Singer, Bill Gates is not a geneticist, but Bill Gates too, and others, today they are openly defending eugenics. They don't mind. They don't mind at all. Openly defending it. In the early 20th century, eugenics was widely supported among the educated classes all across the West. Eugenicists saw themselves as the saviors of the human race, as Harari does, using the most cutting-edge science to eradicate human suffering and to improve humanity by encouraging the reproduction of only the fittest members of the human race, and discouraging the reproduction of the unfit, right? Those useless people. Eugenicists believed that they could rapidly create a race of strong, healthy, super intelligent human beings. No longer would the state and the society be burdened with the mentally disabled and those who drain the resources of society with their weakness and diseases. Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger called she used the term moral degenerates. Sanger, who is the heroine of the screeching abortion activist of today, was an enthusiastic proponent of eugenics, no question about it. She openly advocated the forcible sterilization of the unfit and the involuntary collection of such people into, yes, internment camps. That's Planned Parenthood. Internment camps where they would spend their entire lives in forced labor. Hitler much? She claimed that these methods were necessary for the sake of peace, right? And today, it's about national security, or it's to save the planet. It's necessary to save the planet. That's contemporary vernacular. These ideas were carried in various Western countries, including the United States of America. In the U.S., tens of thousands of people were deemed unfit and were forcibly sterilized. The eugenics movement received a bit of a black eye when the Nazis took these principles to their logical conclusion, the final solution. They didn't only target Jews. This regime, in the name of national security, exterminated anybody who they could deem either mentally handicapped or any other group that was determined to be a drain on society or who was out of step with their rational society. And if you're familiar with Friedrich Nietzsche, his philosophy was a major influence on Hitler, and Friedrich Nietzsche has been a major influence on many leaders in science and politics today. Nietzsche's concept of the will to power emphasizes the driving force behind human behavior and the pursuit of dominance. Some proponents of eugenics have interpreted this concept to suggest that society should promote the breeding of individuals with desirable traits to enhance the power and vitality of the human race. Nietzsche discussed a distinction between master morality and slave morality that saw the strong, dominant individuals associated with master morality as superior and believed that their qualities should be preserved and propagated through selective breeding. That's why stuff like this is so important right now. These groups, right? The Center for Countering Digital Hate. That's what they're doing. They're deciding who's moral, who's allowed, who gets to speak, right? But there was also in Nietzsche's philosophy the concept of the Ubermensch, the overman, the superman, how this is biological heroism, a higher form of human being who transcends traditional moral and societal constraints. Right? That is the ultimate utilitarian. It's common to hear commentators in the public square play down the suggestion that eugenics is alive and well, right? That's a thing for the past. That's primitive. They say it's a failed experiment. This is wrong. Eugenics has not failed. In fact, it is more of a force to be reckoned with right now than ever before. And that is what this whole jab campaign, the countermeasures, and the deaths now, people dropping dead, and the fact that you can't really talk about it in the public square without being shouted down or banned, censored, or just kicked out or just ridiculed. Every day, parents all around the world choose what kind of baby they would like to have. You see, we've got all kinds of eugenics going on all around us at all times. Dave Rubin, a professed conservative who says he wants the best for humanity, flaunted his eugenic worldview for the world to see when he described the process of how he and his so-called husband were having 2 babies. Let's listen for a moment.
To me, at some level, this is a little bit weird. Like, I've had to learn a lot of stuff. Those are 2 different wombs, and those are 2 different babies. These are young women who are willing to donate their eggs, and if they want to help people that otherwise can't have children, they can donate their eggs. So you basically go on all of these websites, sort of like Tinder or whatever app you were dating on, where you're just kind of swiping through people, and you say, oh, I like the way she looks, or I like this girl had a great education, or some combination thereof.
That is eugenics. It's what Adolf Hitler was doing, creating a master race by selectively breeding to carefully select the egg donor based on her education, based on how she looks.
Armor of truth.
So it's not an attack.
Oh,
not attacking any people.
Let's have this guy stop for a minute. This guy's a maniac. He's out of control. Who is this guy anyway? Summer, who is that guy?
He's a maniac.
Some YouTuber. So it's not only about having the child of your desired sex. Many IVF clinics are offering to test embryos for such thing as intelligence, susceptibility to certain diseases, eye color, for example. There's one more clip here from Dave. Yeah, that quote about women who are willing to donate their eggs, it's like Tinder, you just swipe through. Does he not hear himself talking? He says he's a conservative. He's got all this philosophy. He is blind. This is Romans 1 in action. The man cannot reason to the truth. He's got a worldview that he pretends to live by, but how can you sit there and say, we're going to pick the mother? That's eugenics, man. It's become normal and conventional. It fires me up, man. That really aggravates. Because, who is this guy? Who does he think he is?
Not that much. I'm not a scientist, but it's hard for 2 biological men or 2 biological women to actually reproduce without some help. And he's a little bit younger than me, so he grew up in a time when it was just obvious that, you could be gay and have a family and be somewhat normal. I don't like that word normal, but
I wonder why Dave doesn't like that word normal, Summer. Why doesn't Dave like the word normal?
Well,
because he knows that he's trying to live a contradiction. Listen to what he says right here. Listen to what he's saying. He's telling on himself.
You could have something normal and something conventional, as boring as that may sound to some degree. Where I grew up, when I grew up,
like being boring and traditional, or being traditional, that's just boring, right?
That is.
He's a conservative, right?
Yeah, it's horrible. Honestly, it's disgusting. I have to really say that it is.
Browsing catalogs for sperm donors.
Mm-hmm.
Selecting for desirable characteristics.
And then to just talk down like that about women, women who can have children, and that's a beautiful thing. That's a gift. That's a blessing. And he just wants to say that's humdrum. That's normal. That's bad.
Eugenics is alive and well. Let's talk about it for a minute. Let's talk about what Rubin engaged in here, and what so many people do. A lot of couples who can't have children engage in this, and there's a huge ethical concern, especially in this case, because this is not a married couple, not a real married couple. This is gay mirage. The process of how this is this: a single sperm is directly injected into a mature egg. After fertilization, the egg develops, or let's in this case, in Rubin's case, it was 19 eggs. But anyway, after fertilization, the eggs develop into embryos in a controlled environment in the laboratory. The embryos are monitored, and after a few days of development, one or more embryos are selected for transfer. And in a procedure that is usually quick and doesn't even require anesthesia, you're in and out in an outpatient manner, the doctor implants the embryos into the surrogate's uterus. Now, on average, about 8 to 15 eggs are retrieved from a donor or from a mother. All are fertilized. But only 1 or 2 embryos are used. So what happens to the remaining 6 or 13, or in Dave Rubin's case, the 17 unused embryos? What happens to them? Does anybody care? Because I'm telling you, you can't get around it. It's life. It's unambiguous. Everywhere else in nature, conception happens at the moment that the thing starts, that the cells start dividing. Right? It's going on its own. Well, they're destroyed. Well, they could be or they could be frozen and kept for other people. Like, it's called cryopreservation or embryo freezing. That allows the embryos to be stored at super low temperatures, about minus 196 Celsius, for a long period. And this allows for other individuals or couples to attempt pregnancy without the need for another round of egg retrieval and fertilization. All right, so here's the first thing. We got human life frozen, put on ice, and held for later. Is that eugenics? Is that right? The claim on the Nazis was that they had camps where they would murder people in various ways, sometimes with gas, sometimes they would just incinerate people. Well, I'm glad we don't do that today. I'm so glad we don't do that today. Well, what about the disposal? There is one, let's see here. Let me find my notes here. There is one version of disposal. I'll give you all of the. The eggs are either they can be frozen and other people can use them, or they can be sent for research, right? They can be various types of scientific studies, including stem cell research, a lot of ethical concerns there. But in most situations, the embryos, which are lives, are discarded, destroyed. But how? Right? Isn't it good that we don't sacrifice children to Moloch today, right? Do we not? Isn't it good that we don't incinerate human life today? If the embryos have been frozen, the most common method of disposal is the controlled warming of the embryos, rendering them non-viable, allowing them to thaw and die. You have to allow your mind to imagine that as a human person. In some clinics, unwanted, unused embryos are placed in a chemical solution that is specifically designed to halt their development and ensure their non-viability, to ensure they don't live. One commonly used solution for embryo disposal is a concentrated salt solution, right? And high concentrations of dimethyl sulfoxide and glycerol. This is toxic, right? It's a toxic environment, and it halts their growth and it speeds up their death. Some clinics burn the extraneous, superfluous embryos in a specialized medical incinerator to ensure their complete destruction. I'm sure glad that we don't incinerate human beings today, right? We're so much wiser and compassionate today. Treated as commodities, treated like products and judged to be unequal, those embryos, those human beings, those image bearers of God that don't pass the test are destroyed Just like millions of lives have been destroyed by such movements seeking utopia, or these movements like Musk and Zuckerberg said, we got to keep humanity relevant. We want to improve humanity, right? In the name of improving humanity, so much evil has been done. And in this case, it's mass murder. Mass murder. Very utilitarian, right? Very rational. Very pragmatic. These forms of eugenics are hidden behind the walls of clinics under the respectable symbol of a white lab coat. It's marketed as caring. It's marketed as family planning. Or in the modern vernacular, my body, my choice. But it's just the same mentality that motivated Hitler, Margaret Sanger, the eugenicists of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, reducing the value of human beings either to useful or useless, as Harari just indicated. The end result is often the same. It is a dead human being. You can't get around it. And was Dave Ruman, was he concerned at all about the 17 embryos that weren't chosen? Garland Thompson calls this velvet eugenics, like the Velvet Revolution. It is accomplished without overt violence. That's because the violence is hidden. Thompson says it turns people into products. Then there is the element of fear and control. Now that is how the pandemic narrative worked. Parents, in this case, parents have been trained to immediately fear if they hear, if a doctor or a clinician says, it's possible this baby has Down syndrome, something like that. Well, the decision to end the life of the child is based on the worst case scenario. Today, it's becoming more and more common for doctors to warn expectant parents of a whole list of possible problems. A whole list of illnesses and possible diseases that the child could have or might experience at some point in their lives. Right? This tactic has the effect of reducing an unborn child down to a single aspect, a single possibility 20 years later. Right? They look at the genetics. Some possible defect, some possible illness that may or may not happen. This is what's influencing parents to judge their child's value on that point alone. This worldview is alive and well without a doubt. Let me bring back to your mind here something called the Nazi T4 plan, also known as Action T4. It was a covert euthanasia program implemented by the Nazi regime in Germany during World War II. A covert euthanasia plan. Is that what we're seeing? Is that what we're seeing? Are we seeing, it's not covert, but are we seeing today a plan to reduce human beings, to reduce population?
Absolutely.
That's what the Nazis are doing in Action T4.
And
they
were
doing
reducing it with fentanyl too and trank.
Oh yeah. The purpose of the Nazi T4 program was to systematically exterminate individuals. In their case, when they found someone who had a physical disability. In our case today, it's going to be because we hold the wrong values. Christians need to be exterminated. Don't think that isn't possible. That Christians have been the most persecuted group throughout history. There's just never been a people group more persecuted than Christians. That's because the world hates Jesus Christ. And because of that, they will hate his followers. And this is what Jesus said himself. I'm not making it up. The program's architects believed that such individuals were a burden on society and that their elimination would serve the interests of improving humanity, right? Like people like us. You got to get rid of us so that the humanity can progress, so that we can be trans this, trans that, transhuman this, transhuman that. We can do what we want to do. It's my life. I can live it how I want to. You can't tell me what to do. People were killed by lethal injection, starvation, and gas chambers. Starvation. I'm so glad we don't do that today. Remember the embryos? The toxic mixture. To implement the program, a network of medical professionals, experts, administrators, and government bureaucrats worked under the supervision of the Orwellian-sounding Reich Committee for the Scientific Registration of Serious Hereditary and Congenital Diseases. Sounds a lot like Planned Parenthood, doesn't it? Based on medical evaluations and assessments, this committee determined which individuals would be targeted for death, for euthanasia. And today, right, today we have, I don't know how many countries now we have the assisted suicide.
Yeah, all throughout the world.
Medically assisted MAIDS, MAIDS,
yeah,
medically assisted.
Suicide.
Something, yeah.
But yeah, they've gotten really far with that in Canada, for one. It's made headlines several times over the past year.
Think about that, right? And just like back then in the T4 program, the killing was initially carried out only in psychiatric hospitals and institutions. But then eventually, it just found its way right out to the general public.
They're normalizing it so that young kids can make the decision to do that if they want to. And then if you're mentally having mental problems, right, you're having mental breakdown, then you can choose to do that. They're setting precedent and normalizing.
Diabolical. They're encouraging people to end their lives, and people are going to do it. Well, the initial phase of that T4 program began in 1939. And it did. People were outraged. It found enough public opposition and concern from the clergy, those Christians gumming up the works again. And so the T4 program was halted in 1941, but not before. 70 to 80,000 people were systematically exterminated. But the improving of humanity didn't stop there. The principles and infrastructure established by the T4 program were adapted and employed into the systematic genocide of millions who were considered undesirable, according to those who were following the science.
Well, think about it, too, with the assisted suicide. Of course, they're going to be making moves to push in the legislation for that, because with all of these Axe Queen issues, they're foreseeing that people will be suffering and want a way out.
Yeah, well, they're going to make it easy, so you can find that way fast. Insanity, isn't it? I mean, it's really we're at such an interesting time to be alive.
Dystopian.
Well, look,
but things can get worse.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Right. This is just the logical conclusion of mankind's autonomous pursuit of perfection, right, and perfect control. Modern science is infected by the myth of perfect control. That if we just use the scientific method the right way, we can eradicate all pain, all suffering. We can eradicate all uncertainty from our lives. We can have exactly the child we want. We can die at exactly the time we want to die, on my terms. Right? Well, this promise leads to certain expectations. And as we saw during the pandemic, safety becomes a virtue. Safety is not a virtue. Happiness is not a virtue. As a Christian, your sanctification is not a guarantee of your happiness. We believe that the mythological entity of the science will save us, right? That's what the culture believes now. That the science, this new God that the culture worships, is going to give everybody a better and easy and more predictable life. For parents with an unborn child who is given a diagnosis of Downs, for example, the science encourages them to erase the problem. It's a problem easily solved. Just a short procedure, no big deal. Instead of welcoming life, instead of accepting the challenge to love this child and experience God's gift of grace through the process, to experience the spiritual growth that comes from embracing trials. What do you think it's going to do to humanity when all trials are rejected, are kept far away, and no one engages in the process of loving through a challenge?
Or having faith in God.
Oh, yeah. Every child is created in the image and likeness of God. No characteristic can alter that. Doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. No disease, no handicap, not even any sin or crime can efface that dignity. But unless we start from the correct starting point, which is a biblical anthropology, that means knowing who we are, what our implicit value is, and who God is, then the outcome will be twisted. Human beings are not beasts. We select and breed animals for certain characteristics because God has given us dominion over the earth and therefore the authority to use animals for certain specific purposes. But we're not to be cruel, as we're called to be good stewards of the earth. We're likewise commanded to practice faithful husbandry of the land and of our animals. But to treat God's image bearers as beasts is to dishonor God, just like with this jab program and these sudden deaths. The value of a human being is not found in their usefulness. Yuval Noah Harari. The value of a human being is found in their being. It's not what they are, it's who they are. And the Great Reset was presented as an excuse to usher in a new stateless empire where this would be the philosophy, this would be the worldview. And if there's ever something fundamentally evil about the rise of totalitarianism and eugenics in the 19th and 20th centuries, let's at least have the courage to call it out, to call these men and women out for promoting the same deadly concepts today. And quickly, let's talk about Chisholm for a minute. G. Brock Chisholm, Tavistokian czar of world health, one prominent psychiatrist who spent years working at Tavistock. He was a Canadian. Do you know? I think he's a Canadian. See if this job, Summer's done the research on this. Let me make sure the credit's there, but
I can't remember actually where he's from.
I believe he's Canadian.
Okay.
In 1948, Chisholm founded a United Nations affiliated body called the World Health Organization. Is that right? Is that accurate? Is that job with your
Yes,
notes?
he was the first general director of the World Health Organization.
Right.
That's right.
Now, what's interesting about Chisholm? Well, the aim of the WHO then was promoting the mental and physical health of the world. Sounds like a noble endeavor. It carries a lot of responsibility and power, and it requires a leader with exceptional insight into the nature of sickness and health and the mind. Sadly, based on his own sick views of the nature of mankind and society, he started from the wrong starting point. Brock, what's his name? Brock.
George Brock.
Chisholm. George Brock Chisholm. He was certainly the wrong man for the job, but he had it. Now, among the greatest causes of war and mental sickness in Chisholm's mind were not to be found in imperialism or economic injustice, but rather in society's belief in right and wrong. Take it, Summer. What was he known for? What was G. Brock Chisholm really known for as far as psychology?
So 1946, the reestablishment of peacetime psychiatry. The lecture includes a proclamation that psychiatrists should take it upon themselves to rid the population of the concept of good and evil entirely. And really it's acknowledging that psychiatry is a weapon of the ruling class.
Yes. How about that?
They made a conscious effort to get in and infiltrate the church, schools, the medical industry, and just at every level of society, just reiterating over and over this worldview that the concept of good and evil is antiquated.
Well, it wasn't only the concept of right and wrong or faith in the certainties of old people, which had to be eradicated, but also monotheistic religion, family, and patriotism got to go too. All of that's got to go. 8 years later, from the inception of the World Health Organization, Chisholm said, to achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism. He's saying right there to remove the knowledge that they are created in the image of God. Take away from them the idea that they have dignity, right? Take away their loyalty to family and tradition and nation and religion or religious dogmas. Well, by 1971, the world was ripe for a big change. Baby boomer targets of this vast social engineering experiment had been inundated by a vast arsenal of cultural warfare on every level. While LSD was spread across the campuses of America and assassinations of Western leaders who resisted the new age of wars in Southwest Asia became the norm, the baby boomers watched as their loved ones returned from Vietnam in body bags. And then all of a sudden, not trusting anyone over 30 became the new wisdom as the love of country was suffocated.
Well, that's going on today.
Yeah.
Not trusting anybody over 30. I see that that's quite prevalent.
Yeah, that's part of the postmodern worldview, right? You trust in yourself.
We're a
alone.
dying breed, according to many millennials.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably about all that I've got for tonight. I think that's enough. It sounds a lot like, when Harari said that about useless people. You wonder, did he have Kissinger somewhere in his training?
Yeah.
Kissinger was the one who
they're all in the
coined
same
the
circle.
useless eaters moniker.
Yeah.
Henry Kissinger's NSSM 200 report transformed U.S. foreign policy and doctrine from pro-development to pro-population reduction. Right? Kissinger sits at the genesis of the population reduction movement, and maybe it was Kissinger who built the Georgia Guidestones, because everything on those Guidestones that's Kissinger's worldview. Like the Human Genome Project that revives sleeping monsters. We saw that the other day, and the company, I can't remember the name of the company.
We saw that. It's like they want to bring
the woolly mammoth.
The woolly mammoth and all these
and other
dinosaurs.
dinosaurs. They want to bring these things back to life. The Human Genome Project represents, they said at the time, that represents one of the remarkable achievements in the history of science. Its culmination signals the beginning of a new era in biomedical research. Biology is being transformed into an information science. Commenting on the potential for steering human evolution made possible by the Human Genome Project and new developments in mRNA, CRISPR technology, Richard Dawkins, one of the four horsemen of atheism, of the new atheism, wrote in 2006, quote, "In the 1920s and 30s, scientists from both the political left and right would not have found the idea of designer babies particularly dangerous, though of course they would not have used that phrase. Today, I suspect the idea is too dangerous for a comfortable discussion, and my conjecture is that Adolf Hitler is responsible for the change. I wonder whether some 60 years after Hitler's death, we might at least venture to ask, What is the moral difference between breeding for a musical ability and forcing a child to take musical lessons? It's called agency and choice. Or why is it acceptable, Dawkins says, to train fast runners and high jumpers but not to breed them? Can you hear this man? This man is completely blinded to what he's saying. His heart is a stone. He goes on to say, I can think of some answers, and they're good ones, which would probably end up persuading me. But hasn't the time come when we should stop being frightened even to put the question, unquote? Hasn't the time come for us to accept Dave Rubin's eugenics, his version of eugenics?
Well, yeah, that's how it works, right? They've got to invite everybody into the madness, and then later on, they're going to tell people, "Well, this is what you guys wanted. You wanted this, and so it's your own fault."
There was a summit in 2015. It's the International Summit on Human Gene Editing, December of 2015. Conference chairman David Baltimore echoed creepy words of Julian Huxley that we've shared here before during his keynote speech. He said, quote, over the years, the unthinkable has become conceivable. We're on the cusp of a new era in human history. In January 2021, John Holdren congratulated Eric Lander for being appointed Joe Biden's science czar. Eric Lander was Barack Obama's science czar, director of White House Science and Technology Policy, the position formerly held by Holdren. I meant to say it was Holdren. In this position, Lander has overseen the reactivation of every Obama-era science policy as part of a technocratic overhaul of the U.S. government in conformity with the World Economic Forum's Great Reset agenda, using the vast power of the Emergency Authorization Act to bypass the FDA and steamroll gene therapy technologies, passing themselves off as axe queens. A new social experiment has begun. A new social experiment has begun, and it's going on right now around us as we see people dropping dead all over the place. And CRISPR technology already being held as the key to solving the new mutating strains of Novodomptine, and is being used as an axe queen for certain tropical diseases as of today. The obvious connection between eugenics organizations of yesterday and the rise of modern mRNA operations associated with Gavi and Oxford's AstraZeneca, unveiled by investigative journalist Whitney Webb last year, or a couple years ago, should be kept firmly in mind. With this will this technology be used by modern-day Nazis, modern-day eugenicists, in an effort to pick up where Dr. Mengele left off? Or will we see this biotechnology serve the interests of humanity under a multipolar paradigm that cherishes sovereignty, national sovereignty, that cherishes human life and family and faith? Well, the chances are slim if these same people stay in power, because their worldview is twisted. All right. That's all I've got. Sam, do you have anything you want to add here at the end before I take us out with a little promo?
No, not at all. Thank you. That was wonderful, as always.
Well, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me today and doing this. It's late again, but we got it done, and we'll see you again very soon here on Armor of Truth Live. Keep an eye out on on the Armor of Truth mobile app for new articles and a new Tracking Dystopia video and a new James Bible study video to come out very soon.
The hammer comes
inspiring a worldview revolution through God's revelation, proclaiming Christ as King, and we, Summer and myself, as your servants. If you'd like to help Armor of Truth succeed, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, and share this video. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to our channel. It's free, and it really does help. Another way you can help AOT succeed is download the Armor of Truth mobile app. It's free, and it'll always be free. You'll get live notifications and a direct link to the live show, wherever it is, exclusive content, instant access to articles, reports, and resources. It's all there on the Armor of Truth mobile app, but that's not all. You also get access to 6 English translations of the Bible, including the KJV and the ESV. Or, if you've had a long day, press play and listen to your preferred Bible version. Also, you'll get 3 relaxing videos where Rob, AOT's brother from down under, reads the books of 2 John, Jude, and all 6 chapters of Ephesians, and that's soothing Aussie timber. So what are you waiting for? Download the Armor of Truth mobile app right now. The next step is live streaming Armor of Truth live on your Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Chrome, or on your smart TV. So partner with us today to help Armor of Truth reach the next goal in our mission to bring a biblical social theory to the public square that is radically different from all other social theories. We go beyond the vague concept of progress and the greater good. In the spirit of the Reformers, we aim to make a complex world comprehensible, seeking nothing less than a worldview revolution. By the way, I am Brad. Summer and I really love to hear from you. So if you've been blessed by our work in some way, if you have a question or a complaint, or you just want to say hello, please contact us anytime by either emailing us at hello@armoroftruth.net, or you can leave a voice message. And thanks to those who did that last week. The link is in the description here, or go to the website, armoroftruth.net. Everyone's chosen a side, and there are only 2 options. It's Christ or chaos. And we need you. If you're struggling to get by, please don't send your money to us. Always support your local church first. Our work is always going to be free, and that's our commitment. If you can support AOT financially, every little bit helps. Use that AOT mobile app, visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links in the description under this video, because every donation of any size makes a difference. If each AOT Live viewer gave $1 for every show, we'd make it easily. So don't think you have to commit beyond your means, because you don't. The Lord can turn a redneck into a preacher, and he can turn a dollar into an empire. We know that for sure. And if you're able to set up a regular monthly donation, that helps us a lot with our planning. I am Brad, and I could not do any of this without the hard work, expertise, and partnership of my faithful wife, Summer. And a special thank you to the SEH Tabitha Foundation for making what you see here possible. And together, we are Armor of Truth. And we don't expect this to be a comfortable ride, but we rejoice at the opportunity.
Absolutely, we sure do.
We rejoice at the opportunity that we're going to have probably to suffer for Christ and the gospel as his ambassadors. And by God's grace, we proclaim Christ as King, and we as your servants. That's 2 Corinthians 4:5. Seeking nothing less than a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
Yes. Download the Armor of Truth mobile app today. God bless you, my friends. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
The hammer comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life with a big national security stick. And so that people learn to duck their head and not speak up, because bad idea now.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps.
Find us, armoroftruth.net.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God. Superman who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.